Thank you.
This is Chris. Do you have me? I'm not on video today.
I hear you, Chris. This is Laura.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, me
Okay,
too.
thanks.
Now I'll
Oh.
see.
So let's see. So I think we're good now. So I think we're definitely at 7. So let's get started. Cynthia, do you think you could take the roll?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. Want to let everybody know this is being recorded. Okay, Professor Ann Trom,
Here.
Vice Chair Dave Mendiola,
I am here.
Chris June Kiliani,
Here.
Laura Fitzsimmons,
Here.
Rob Tellis, Julie Kavanaugh Bill, Joni Easley,
Yep.
Lorinda Wickman, Bevan Lister,
Yes, I'm here.
Jeff Wells,
Hello.
Drew Christensen,
I'm here.
Kate Thomas, and Justice Moppin. We have 8.
Professor Trom, you are on mute.
Okay, thank you so much for doing that. Welcome, everybody. I think we have a not too long meeting today, but we have some important updates and a few action items which will move to the front of the meeting after we do public comment so that we can make sure that the people who need to act on the action items can participate. But I think we should be fine on timing. So the first item is public comment. I noticed that Cynthia, I think, circulated one public comment from an inmate at NNCC. So that's been circulated to the board, and that person seemed at least enthusiastic about the existence of DIDs. And are there any other public comments?
No, I just checked and there's nothing.
And is there anyone online who's here who would like to make a comment? No. Okay, hearing none.
Professor Trom, Chair Trom, I do have a question about the public comment. I know that it's not typical for any board to comment on public comment, but will some of these issues that were brought up by Mr. Clark be addressed as an agenda item in a future meeting? Will staff be handling the substance of those complaints and responding? How is that going to work?
Marcy, do you want to address that?
Yes, we did take Mr. Clark's concerns because he wrote a separate letter, and we did forward it to John Arascata to make sure that he was aware of that complaint. So that was the action that we took on that.
Okay, so someone will be getting back to him. He'll get a response? What will happen?
We wrote him to let him know that we forwarded it to John Arascata.
You let him know. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Trump.
That's great. And just to, I guess there is a place on the website to also make comments. So I'm just curious if you've been getting other comments or people have been responding to the website, and whether you're just responding to those sort of ad hoc or trying to get everyone some kind of response.
We're in the process of replying to everyone that mails into us. What we've received thus far are mainly complaints about representation in Washoe and Clark. When we've received those, we've contacted the heads of those offices and forwarded that letter to them. So that's how we've been responding to many of those. And we haven't had an extreme amount, but everyone has been replied to.
Okay, that's great.
Madam Chair, this is Chris. Can I just do a follow-up?
Sure.
Thank you. Marcy, that makes good sense for you to forward it to where it needs to go. But when it's really solely dealing with the rest of the counties, I do think, so you sent a letter to Estrada, but I think I would ask that he would respond to you and then that be shared with the board. So at least we close the loophole, don't leave somebody out there hanging. I think that was Joni's real concern. I think.
Yes, and thank you, Chris, for clarifying that, and I think that's a great suggestion.
And if I may respond, this has been an issue that we were thinking of putting on the agenda is what is our authority when we receive these complaints? Because there's already the bar where if you feel that someone is doing something, you can file a complaint with the bar and they can ultimately make that decision, or you can file a post-conviction claim for relief. We don't necessarily have the ability to conduct a hearing. So we wanted to have a further discussion for guidance when there's an issue that does affect the rural counties. So if you'd like that to be agendized next time, or if you would like to have us discuss it when we actually have something come up that addresses that, would request that.
This is Laura. I suggest if you could, Marcy, put it on the next agenda. I'd like to have something in some kind of structure available. And obviously we can't have hearings or anything else, but it's probably information we need to be aware of. And a post-conviction, the state bar doesn't do squat when it comes to indigent defense. And from what I've seen, and a post-conviction is, a whole nother issue.
I agree. We can put, let's put that on the agenda for.
And maybe we need to review the legislation that created the board, because didn't it specifically address the issue of complaints? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yes, I think it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I think that will be a useful discussion to sort of outline some kind of process for responding. And I think the question is, I think there is a legislative purpose and reason to have some kind of complaint clearing process. And I agree, we can just structure it so that we feel like we're being attentive, even if there's, and figure out a little bit about what the department should be doing. So I think that'll be useful.
So I would make the editorial comment, however, that a lot of inmates sitting around have very little to do other than write letters and such. And if we start entertaining every single letter and we go through every item and we have a public comment thing, we're going to be inundated with these things. I think we should limit, I think we might have the discussion that we've just talked about as to what types of issues we would bring forward and what types of issues we don't. But I really would object to bringing all of them forward, because once they get spread around, we're going to be spending hours doing it.
That's exactly the conversation that Marcy and I were having. And I think that's why it'd be good to have this on the agenda as something that the board helps us to narrow what the focus is for that complaint. So again, with our small staff, we're not inundated, but also that we have clear direction and can put that, wording in with the complaint form or the blank or whatever, so people will know exactly what the purpose is.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I think the bigger issue is what authority Marcy and staff have to address any of this. So I'll welcome that discussion.
And
Good.
then this is Chris, for wrapping up this part of the agenda. Do we then include whatever Mr. Clark's letter as an attachment to the minutes then? So at least, because even though it was circulated, is that become part of the document for the minutes?
I
Oh,
would think so, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
okay. So getting back to our agenda. The first item is approval of the minutes from our last meeting from April 28th, 2021. Does anyone have comments on the minutes that were circulated?
I thought
would
they
make
looked
a motion.
good.
I thought they looked fine. So this Chris G, I would make a motion to approve and accept the minutes as presented.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Minutes are approved. Okay, going on to number 4 on our agenda is the selection of a chair, which I understand we are required by statute to select a chair by July 1. So that's why we put it on for this meeting. I don't know if people want to put forward nominations.
Sure. I'll put forward a nomination for Ann Trom.
Yeah, I'll second that and move nominations be closed.
Good.
No parole for you, Ann.
Oh, God. Okay.
No, probation still, though.
So honored. Okay, all those in favor of me serving again as chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that's done. I think that we probably can move along with our vice chair without having, because that's not required by statute. And I think that is the vice chair position is probably something that we've just can do in order to have a backup plan. So
Well, if you need a motion, I'll move Dave.
It's not on the agenda, though.
Good point.
okay.
Good
I think
afternoon.
we're okay without that. I think it's just because of the statute that we're having this vote. Okay.
Hi, Mike Devon for the record. I apologize for interjecting. I'm acting as the OML counsel. Sophia Long could not attend. I believe it's already been stated, as it's not been agendized, it wouldn't be clear and concise, and therefore that vote shouldn't take place. So forgive the interruption. I'll go back to mute.
My sense is, yeah, that's fine. My sense is that we don't need to do it. If for some reason we do need to do it, we could just do it out of time in August. But my sense is that we probably don't need to because it's probably not required by statute. So that's, I think we'll circle back if we're not good on that, but I think we are. Okay. Next on the agenda is resignation of board members. So I'm just going to do this. I think Julie Kavanaugh-Bill resigned because she's got additional duties on the State Bar of Nevada. So she felt like she needed to prioritize her time. So that is one vacancy. And then Lorinda Wichman stepped into a new role in Nye County. So her time was also kind of squeezed. And so she decided to step down. So we have 2 vacancies. And our goal is to fill those as soon as possible. So we'll be, I think, Marcy, I assume you'll be looking out for replacement people and if people have suggestions. Do you want to say something, Marcy?
Chair, I was just going to let you know that NACO is one appointment, which Lorinda Wick is on, and the other is the Board of Governors. So we've reached out to both of those entities to ask for them to appoint another individual to our board, and I believe they're working on that.
Yeah, so you can see below, we're not meeting in July. I'm assume that by our August meeting, those new folks will be on board. So,
Madam Chair, do we need a motion to accept those resignations, or does it matter?
Madam Chair, if I may.
sure.
Mike Detmer for the record. No vote needs to be taken. The appointments are by the governor. Therefore, the resignation would be done through that mechanism.
Great point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move along. We can go to the caseload study update presentation. I'm going to hand it over to you, Marcy, and then you can introduce our guests. Is that okay?
Yes, I believe that Suzanne Tallarico is here with the National Center for State Courts. And they did provide an interim report, which she is here to talk about, and that has been provided as part of the attachments. So Susanna, if you wanted to take it over.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I do apologize for being late. There were 2 links on my invitation, and I chose the wrong one. So anyway, as Marcy indicated, we have provided an interim report. I last met with you all in either August or September of last year, I think, to discuss putting together an advisory committee for this study, which we did. I think then I also went through a little bit about what our process would be. We did go through all the steps that we had planned to go through, including conducting focus groups, doing a survey, completing a 6-week time study, and following that up with Delphi groups to review some of the findings. In the end, we just simply did not have usable data, largely because we conducted the time study in the midst of the pandemic. So there are 3 main pieces of data we need to calculate the case weights, which we can then use to develop models and show what the needs are for attorneys and other staff. And those include data on how long it takes to process cases that we usually get from a time study. We need the number of cases that the attorneys are working on, and we need the year value. So the first 2, we thought we had a good opportunity to obtain, but in the end, even the case number data, we believe, was not recorded in a consistent fashion by all of the attorneys, even though they did give that information to us. For the year value, that's something that the advisory committee set up with some guidance from us. We did get feedback that year value was not consistent with other public defender office, particularly in Clark and Washoe counties. So we will be adjusting that for next year. So as I said, during the time study, we had all of the contract and public defender employees from the rural counties participate, as well as their staff and 2 investigators. However, it just was not enough information, largely because we had parts of cases that weren't being conducted in a traditional manner. Virtually no jury trials at all. Most of those started shortly after we started doing our Delphi groups in April. And what we heard in the focus groups also was that 2020 period had much fewer cases and a different makeup of cases, just because police weren't arresting people at the rate that they had been in previous years. So basically, we came up short. We did offer to generate some case weights based on past studies that we conducted with public defenders in other states. We did provide that to Marcy, and in the end decided not to use those because the last time a study was conducted, I believe around 2009 in Nevada for this group of indigent defense providers, that kind of data was provided and it was met with severe criticism. So we just decided instead to put together this interim report, basically saying that the data were not adequate for us to develop usable case weights and to come up with a plan B. So as you probably know, Marcy and her staff have put together a data entry system called Legal Server that attorneys can start entering data into now. That will include the types of cases on which they're working, and those case types align with the case types that we were collecting data on during the time study, and how many hours they spend working on those cases. So it'll be compulsory for all attorneys within the DID system to start entering data in that beginning October of this year, October of 2021. So what we've offered to do is to work with Marcy and her staff to use that data instead to generate case weights next year. So essentially that data as it relates to casework should be very consistent with what we collect from a time study. So we feel pretty good about that. And it will also include the number of cases. So we should get those 2 critical pieces of information. What we won't be able to get that we did get from the current time study is how much time those attorneys are spending on that non-case related work, like going to meetings and other work that they do in their capacity as an indigent defense provider, but that's not directly related to cases. We do have that information from our current time study. And so what we'll do when we come back is probably include that information in our Delphi groups when we review the data with the expert attorneys to assess whether they feel like that time is adequate. And in that phase of the study where we look at what is versus what should be. So anyway, what we're hoping to do is come back and we'll check in with Marcy from time to time just to see how that database is building. We hope that within a period of 6, maybe 7 or 8 months, so that would put us at maybe March or April of next year, that we can come back and mine that data and basically develop the case weights that we thought we were going to be able to do in the current study. We do have already in place a 1-year no cost extension on our contract. So we're set to do that at no additional cost to the state.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Questions about that report on the work study, on the case study?
No, the COVID really threw a wrench in the works, didn't it?
Yeah, yes, it did. And, you know, we did conduct our focus groups, and we did know that there was some workarounds, lots of workarounds, but people thought that by the time we did the studies at the end of January, into March, that we would be okay and we would get adequate and accurate data, and it just turned out that we didn't. So
yeah.
I have a question about the focus. So I'm curious whether you're going to do more focus group follow-up this time. And I was also curious if you could just explain what categories of time you're talking about when you say it's not case related. Like, are you talking about travel or something like that? Like, just curious if you could fill in.
Sure. I'm sorry, what was your first question?
About whether you're going to do a follow-up on with the focus
yes.
in normal time.
I think we probably will be doing some additional focus groups. And again, because one of the key questions that we're looking at, not only with attorneys, but with judges and court staff, you know, across the system, is what changes or what workarounds that occurred during COVID are continuing to exist once we're back to, quote, normal, if we ever really get there. So that'll be probably one of the sets of questions we'll pursue. Because we've already sort of gone through this process once, I don't think we'll be able to conduct those focus groups in person, but doing them via Zoom was, I thought, very useful. We had very good participation. So I think we'll probably just do them in that fashion again.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, and then we will also do that Delphi piece again, which is looking at, you know, the findings and then working through with attorneys whether that's adequate time to process those cases. And then in terms of the non-case related work, yes, travel is one of those. Going to meetings is another, doing supervision, doing kind of administrative paperwork. So in this case, entering data into that legal server system would all be stuff that they're doing in their capacity as a public defender or contract indigent defense provider, but it's not necessarily directly related to a case. So those are the kinds of things that we would put in that category.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about the workload study?
Madam Chair, this is Drew. I just had a question. The participants in the Delphi portion of the analysis, how are those individuals chosen?
Essentially, it's perhaps a little bit of arm twisting. I'm not sure on Marcy's part. And also via invitation. So basically they were, what we did was we told Marcy, these are the groups that we want, that we want to look at different types of cases. And could she identify a recommendation? So I think she tried to get people from all of the counties, if I'm not mistaken. And Marcy, you might want to jump in here. And specifically, we did one on death penalty cases. And so she selected those people who are deemed to be the most expert in those in the death penalty cases. But Marcy, do you want to talk about the other ones?
That's correct. Drew, what we did is we reached out to, she wanted a panel for the established public defender offices. So we reached out to each public defender office and asked them to nominate someone from their office to participate. As for the appointed counsel, we reached out to either county leadership, if that's who they wanted us to reach out to, or we'd reach out to the attorneys in each county and ask one of them to volunteer. And then finally, for the death penalty group, we took individuals that are practicing or having death penalty cases in the past to be on that panel as well. So it was volunteer, but we did reach out to each county to ask them to volunteer in the appropriate group.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments about the caseload study? We're good. Okay, so am I hearing you correctly? It's like 8 months from now or something that you think you're going to be done?
You know, we've extended it to June of 2022
Yeah.
just to be
Okay.
safe.
Okay.
So it really just depends on whether people are accurately and consistently using that legal server system, and you know, once it's deemed that we get good data. So it's unclear at this point, but we're quite certain we could be done by June of 2022.
Good. Okay, sounds good.
Just quickly, I'm sure Marcy's already thought of this, but we're okay with the Davis settlement on this?
Yes, so going to the Davis settlement, it says that we are required to enter into a contract within, I believe it is, we have to enter into a contract within 12 months of the effective date. So we've already entered into a contract, and the standards must be included in a contract within 6 months after the completion of the study. And the study at this point is not completed. They're only providing an interim report. So we believe that the study will be completed by the end of next year, and then we'll be back on the timeline. There is no requirement for when the Delphi study needs to be completed.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Laura. Okay, I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the review and approval of the annual report. So I don't know if you want to say something, Marcy. I just want to say thank you to Marcy and Jared and Thomas, everyone. This is and to the Professor Hernan, who's the Davis consent judgment monitor. That there was just a lot of work that went into compiling the different components. It's very useful. There's a lot of information in there. So Marcy, do you want to say anything?
Yes, Chair. Pursuant to statute, we are required to submit this report to the board for input, and we have to provide it to the Supreme Court, the Office of the Governor, and the legislature prior to July 1st. So we are submitting it to you at this point in time for any sort of input that you would like to receive or provide. As you can see, we wanted to allow Professor Traum or Chair Traum the opportunity to do the introduction to the report. We highlighted the board, the department, the methods of delivery of indigent defense. We talked about the litigation for Davis and how we're currently implementing the Davis obligations. And we closed with the data collection that we've been able to provide, which is still very inconsistent, but we tried to put it together in a similar manner to be helpful. So we would request any sort of input and the allowance to provide this to those three offices.
Madam Chair, I have one question.
Go ahead.
I'll hear Joni and then Chris. Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joni.
All of us, I'm assuming, received an update this morning from Cindy that there were changes made to pages 4 and 28, and I just wondered what those changes were. I didn't have time to compare the documents.
I can answer that, Chair. What was added on page 4 was Chair Traum wanted to add a portion to her letter thanking Julie Kavanaugh, Bill, and Lorinda Wickman for their service, and just noted that those are 2 vacancies. So that's the second paragraph, the last sentence. And then on page 28, we received additional information from Jason Ernest in Esmeralda County as to how much support staff and how many motions to suppress he had completed. So we updated the report to include that information.
Thank you. And I did notice in the report that Esmeralda was misspelled a couple of times. So we might want to check that.
Good. That's useful. Thank you. I'm going to go to Chris Gianculiani, and then I'll go to you, Jonelle Thomas.
Thanks.
Chris?
I just wanted to see if Marcy thought we needed to reflect anything that positively happened in the session for us, like the budget, but that there's still shortfalls or anything along those lines. So it's keeping the case forward for next session.
Thank you, Chris. We did discuss the budget on page page 9 of the report, and we talked about the funding that we had received. And we did note on there that in the future, we're hoping that we can have that within our department for allocation. And we did note certain areas where we received no funding, such as the out-of-state travel. And finally, we did discuss the AB 480 within the report, which is what was done at the legislature.
Okay, thank you. I missed that.
Okay, thank you. Jonelle Thomas, go ahead.
I'm looking at page 22 and for the Special Public Defender's Office, the staffing information looks correct, but the caseload information is very, very wrong. I would be happy to work with you on getting up-to-date information. For example, it has us handling 422 misdemeanors, but we don't actually handle any misdemeanors. So I'm happy to work with you today or tomorrow if you'd like to update before you send that out.
Jonelle, I'll reach out to you for those numbers so I can update it.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that, Jonelle. Bevan Lister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, it took a minute to get off of mute. So one question I had is on the Lincoln County page of the report there, it's noting that we just have one attorney. And yes, our contract is primarily with one attorney, but we also have conflict counsel. Is that not counted? I'm not understanding some of the parameters here, so.
Bevan, we did put who was contracted in each county. So we only included the main point unless it was actually an office of public defense. Otherwise, we just noted it as the main attorney that was contracted.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And Marcy, just to follow up on that, is it noted someplace? I'm just not sure what I've seen, but is it noted someplace that we're not counting, like exactly his question, that we're not counting conflict counsel and just the contracted attorney?
We could note that. We did not receive any sort of reporting from the contract counsel, so that's mainly why they weren't included. So if you'd like that to be noted somewhere, we can.
I think it might be useful someplace to just indicate that's what was being counted. Jonelle, do you still have your hand up? Or you're done? Okay, no problem. Anyone else have comments, questions on the annual report?
Chair Trump, Dave Mendiola.
Go ahead.
I want to thank the staff. I thought the report was great. The amount of information captured at a pretty difficult time, and a lot of movement within the staff. I thought you guys did a great job. I think it really does capture what we've tried to achieve, and congratulations. I think it's a good report.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are supposed to approve the report. So can we have a motion to approve the annual report for submission?
I think I would make the motion to approve the report with the modifications that have been suggested.
Good. I'll second that.
Great, thank you. That's can we all in favor of that, of approving the report with the modifications they've noted?
Chair, I have one comment. This is Drew. I noticed just before we vote that when you look at the Clark County page as well, it also kind of fails to take into account the conflict counsel in Clark County. I noticed in Washoe, there's a mention of tertiary conflicts, but no numbers associated with that. I think there needs to be an acknowledgement of the tertiary conflicts in Clark County as well. And at some point, we should bring those numbers forward as well to give a more accurate picture of all the numbers in Clark County.
And Drew, we could add that there was just no space, like Washoe County had a lot of extra space, but we can find a spot and I'll add that in.
Okay.
This is
And
Chris, and I would add those modifications to my motion.
That sounds good. And I think it does go to the general comment that just to be clear about what's being counted. And that way, you know, we can, if there's room, that's great. If we're leaving something out, we've at least acknowledged it and we can decide whether it's going in another report so that we're being accurate. Yeah. Okay. So with the motion and the modifications, including mentioned, including Drew's most recent comment, I think we already have a second for that. All in favor?
Yes, and I'll amend my second.
Good. Okay. So all in favor of the motion to adopt the report with the commentary, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let's go on to the next item is the update from the department. Marcy, can I just hand it over to you and you'll do your parts? And if there's something, if you need to hand it off, you can do that. Thanks.
Okay, I will. So what I'm going to start off with is AB 480, which a copy of it has been provided as an attachment to this meeting. AB 480 is the assembly bill that we submitted as a bill draft request. It is effective October 1st, 2021. And there are some main areas which AB 480 sets forth. So the first part is it creates a distinction between the appointment of counsel and the selection of counsel. So under existing law, judges appoint and also select who the attorney is going to be that's taking the case if there's a conflict with the public defender. But sections 5, 9, and 11 through 17 of this bill modify that process. So if a public defender is disqualified, the judge is the one that still chooses to appoint the attorney, but the selection of that counsel is done if it's a county with a population over 100,000 in accordance to their plan, or if it's a county with a population of less than 100,000, it'll be done by the department or its designee in compliance with the plan. The next area that's addressed is the removal of economic disincentives. Pursuant to the Davis stipulated consent judgment, the department was required to cure any defects by recommending legislation if Nevada revised statutes are inconsistent with AB 81's requirement that the board establish minimum standards for indigent defense that do not create any sort of economic disincentive to providing effective representation. They must provide adequate hourly rates to counsel. They cannot create economic disincentives to counsel by capping total payments. It cannot create an economic disincentive for counsel to employ investigative, expert, or other services by capping payment, and to fix anything that's inconsistent with the state's constitutional and statutory obligation to ensure indigent defendants receive meaningful assistance of counsel. So to begin with, existing law did provide limits on the amount of a fee that an attorney that's appointed could receive in certain cases. Section 6 of the bill removes such limits. Instead, the bills are reviewed either in compliance with the plan if it's county over 100,000, or if it's less than 100,000 by the department or the department's designee in compliance with the plan. Existing law also authorizes an attorney to be reimbursed for certain expenses for investigative, expert, or other services, and they'd have to go to judges in many counties to request that funding. Section 7 of this bill says that an attorney may be reimbursed for those expenses, and it's set forth either in the plan if it's a county over 100,000, or in less than 100,000 populated county, it'd be in compliance with their plan. Existing law requires that a claim for compensation be submitted to the magistrate or the district court for payment. Instead, in Section 8 of this bill, it requires claims to be submitted in counties with a population less than 100,000 to the department or its designee in compliance with the plan, or in a county whose population is 100,000 or more in compliance with the plan. So this is already what's in practice in Clark and Washoe. So we're trying to create some uniformity throughout all of the counties. We've also modified the mandatory appointments of public defenders, which provides consistency with the definition of indigent defense services. As we all know, it was a mandatory appointment or for public defenders to be appointed to represent a parent or guardian of a juvenile, or in 432 432B cases of abuse or neglect or involuntary commitments. Those are no longer mandatory appointments. And the main concern of this is if that weighted caseload study comes back that we need to increase attorneys greatly, counties will have the option to either reduce the workload of the public defenders to comply with that or to add additional public defenders if however the county feels fit. We've also created a special account for the support.
I'm sorry, Marcy, may I ask a question about that?
Yes.
How does a county reduce the workload of a public defender if they can't afford more public defenders? And maybe it's rhetorical, but.
Thank you, Joni. So what we did is we removed mandatory appointments. So certain jobs that public defenders are required to do don't necessarily fall within the definition of indigent defense services. So 432B cases, those don't fall within the definition of indigent defense, but public defenders were required to be appointed for one of those prior to AB 480. The same was true where public defenders could be appointed for involuntary commitments and then representing those parents. This just would require county to think of different options than the public defender if the workload study does not allow public defenders to have additional work.
I hadn't even thought of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I believe where I was the creation of a special account for the support of indigent defense services. Section 12 of the bill creates that special account. So we're able to accept grants or donations or gifts. We have revised the deadlines for transferring the responsibility for the Nevada State Public Defender. And the reason for this revision is for building our budget. With the prior deadline, our budget already had to be submitted to the governor's finance office for approval. And if a county pulled out or opted in, we would have to redo the budget completely. This was just to have our budgets in place by the time that we have to submit them to the finance office. And then finally, section 15 discusses pay for public defenders. We did add language to section 15 that the pay for public defenders must comply with the regulations adopted by the board. And this is only for counties with a population less than 100,000. Specifically kept out were Washoe and Clark County. So those were the changes brought about by Assembly Bill 480. I don't know if there's any questions, any further questions on that.
Ms. Chris, is there anything that you wanted that wasn't in it?
No, pretty much everything that we submitted as part of our bill draft request was approved. The only thing that we had discussed was, I believe the Nevada State Public Defender is appointed by the governor. We had sought to move that to appointed by the board or the department, but we weren't able to get a hold of the governor to get an answer as to whether it was okay to remove that. Otherwise, everything we wanted was in there. So I think it's great.
Thank you. Good job.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, Marcy, but the effective date was moved to October. That was partly to make sure that as the plans are coming in, that we're sort of in compliance and not sort of already out of compliance or struggling to comply. So that made sense.
Yes, so we wanted to make sure that each of the counties were aware of this and had plans in place before this change.
So I would just say that that's just really great success, particularly some of the statutory changes on appointment of counsel are really, really important. Legislative only could be done by legislation changes. So that's really important. I think though, if there's no more comments, we can go on to the budget report. So go ahead.
Thank you. In our annual report on page 9, we did discuss our budget. So I'll be highlighting that as well. We were provided an additional $25,000 for training and resources by the legislature. So we will be able to use that to continue providing high quality training for indigent defense providers. The hope this year is to do an in-person training in Clark County where finally all of the public defenders can start meeting each other in person. So that's our goal with that funding. As for out-of-state travel, we were not allotted any funding for out-of-state travel. As for in-state travel, we still have a very limited budget. So this may affect our ability to provide in-person oversight. Our budget is $10,698, and our state car takes up about half of that. So we really don't have a lot of money to be able to go around to each of the counties. In the future, we're hoping to build that up so that we have more funding to do in-person visits. I think that's the most important thing that we can do. I was just out in Lincoln County with Bevan Lister, and it's so important to see people in person and talk to them face to face. So we're hoping that we're able to do that with all of the counties as we go along. We were provided $75,000 to pay the monitor for the Davis settlement, and the positive step of providing $1.2 million for those rural counties. This is money that was provided or earmarked by the Interim Finance Committee in the contingency account so that we can request reimbursement on behalf of those counties. That money was specifically earmarked for the Davis counties. As for the remainder of the counties, no funding was earmarked. But when it's time to ask for reimbursement pursuant to the maximum contribution formula, we will be required to go to the Board of Examiners as well as IFC, where if it's reimbursement for those Davis counties, we do not have to go to the Board of Examiners. So it's one less step, basically. So I don't know if there's any other questions about our budget.
I don't have any questions, but do you feel, you and your staff feel adequately appreciated for what you did? Because that was really, there was just so much unusual stuff going on, and you guys just hung in there and just did an incredible job.
Thank you, Laura. I think it's also, we have a pretty great board that we're under. So I think this is very exciting.
I just want to say kudos to Marcy and Jared and Thomas and everyone, the staff, because this was not only a challenge, but being done by people who've never done this before. And so many of Marcy's emails said, I've never done this before, but what should I should be asking about the next step? So just to dive right in and sort of duke it out and, get it together to be like, get on top of like what is a very sort of complicated process with a big uphill challenge was really great. So that was well done.
Thank you. And I think as for the legislative process, we did have a lot of help. Kendra Bursky, John Pirro, Alex Ortiz. There's a lot of help from Clark County. Anytime that we call anyone at the public defender's office, special public defender's office, everyone is able to help. So we have a really great community of public defenders, and it's nice to finally start seeing it come together. And, we're just hoping for that face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
And Marcy did a great job in all her testimony, but I loaned her a couple of our lobbyists to help answer some of those questions.
Yes. And just, having those people on the ground, some of whom Marcy just mentioned, is just so important because, and you as well, right? Just actually knowing exactly how to slip things in and make sure they actually get done was just invaluable. So we're really grateful.
Yes, that is correct. So if we can, do we want to move on to the permanent regulation process?
Yes. Yes.
So with Chair Trom's permission, we did submit our temporary regulations to the Legislative Council Bureau with the changes that were attached. The changes are in red and it was an attachment. Our concern is that we will have another special session, and especially considering our temporary regulations expire November 1st, we are hoping to act quickly to get these in place. Just a reminder as to what the process is we need to submit them for review by the Legislative Council Bureau either before or after a workshop. So our plan is once we receive those back from LCB, we will schedule a workshop. We'll have a workshop just previously like we did before where we receive public comments. If there are no modifications, then we can set this for a public hearing with a notice of intent to adopt and we can act appropriately. If there are changes at the workshop, we'll have to resubmit them to LCB, and they are, pursuant to statute, supposed to get them back to us within 30 days. But if there's a special session like we had last time, that could slow down the process. So we did submit them to LCB on June 15th. They are reviewing them at this point in time, but they don't have a timeline of when we will receive them back.
This is Chris. I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I know there'll have to be a special session for redistricting. Is there a plan to have indigent defense regs on a special session call in case they don't get everything back in time?
Marcy, I don't know how that works well enough to even answer that question.
The governor's office writes up what the call, what's allowed to be discussed during that special session. I'm just saying that if it didn't all align, is there a mechanism or a conversation that could occur with at least the governor's office that it be included in the call for the special session if it's needed?
I'm maybe not understanding, but I don't think that we need to do anything in the special session. The special session would just be a delay and a diversion for LCB that would make them unavailable to turn around our regs. I don't think we have a legislative.
I was interpreting Marcy as something. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a legislative action.
The November one works. Yeah, the November one works as long as there's no delay, but
exactly.
It's okay.
Exactly. So we have three meetings before November 1. We have our August meeting, September meeting, and October meeting. So I think our goal right now would be to put the workshop on the agenda for August, which means like last time we did a workshop in December and then had a public hearing in January. We could have a workshop in August and have a public hearing as soon as September. If there's a hiccup in that, we could still use the October meeting as sort of a fallback and get it done on time. But if there is a hiccup, that would just require the availability of LCB to actually do a turnaround, which is just a possible complication if there's a special session. I mean, when there's a special session. So,
thank you.
So yeah, our goal is to take what's at LCB now includes the changes that we anticipate. So as long as we stick to those, we put that on for an August workshop and then, get comments, and we can, if there's no other changes, we could just take action in September and be done.
Got it.
So does that sound right, Marcy?
That is correct. Because last time with the special sessions, our regulations were supposed to be back to us in 30 days. When we submitted it took over 6 months to receive them back.
Right.
That's what we're trying to not have happen this time.
Right. Okay, so I think we're done with that item and we can go on to the legal server training update.
Tom, did you want to take this one?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Chair Trum. As you heard Suzanne Tellerico discuss earlier, we are rolling out Legal Server, which is a case management and data collection software, providing it to all of the counties and all of the providers free of cost. And so it's kind of a steep learning curve for some people. So what we've done is break it up into 4 different parts. And we've done it every week of June. We've offered 2 different trainings to try to accommodate different people's schedules. So, subject 1, week 1, offered it twice, we recorded both of them, and we're basically doing that for the different subjects every week. We're in the 3rd week right now, and then Cindy has set up a playlist on our YouTube page. So if you go to our website under training, there's a whole section on legal server training. You can go straight to the YouTube page. And if you missed any of the trainings or just want a refresher, all of that's there. You can go over it as many times as possible, which is also helpful because there's potentially new contracts out there and new people coming into the system pretty soon. But as that happens over time too, they'll be able to do that. And then Stan and I have been answering questions all month long by email, and also just making little tweaks to the system. Again, it's super important to our weighted caseload study and to just the mandatory data collection that will be used to comply with Davis and the regs, but also support future funding requests. And again, with the travel limits that we have on oversight, we're going to be leaning on Legal Server pretty heavily right now. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. It's got all kinds of functions, including client surveys built in.
Go ahead. Drew, is that a hand up, Drew? No. Okay. Anyone have questions or comments on Legal Server? I guess my question is just whether you've actually heard from people who are doing it. Like, are you in conversation with them and what are you hearing?
Yes. There have been, it's obvious that some offices are deep into it, you know, starting already. As has been mentioned, it's not mandatory until October, you know, until the plans go into effect, essentially. And, but we're encouraging everyone who can to start using it in July, because then come next year at this time, we can have a full fiscal year of reporting, you know, for other purposes. But as far as the mandatory data reporting and the mandatory use of this system, you know, that doesn't technically start until October. Looks like Mario has a question, Chair Trom, if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Mario.
How you doing, Tom? I was just wondering, you know, I know there's not currently one, and I was just wondering in your interactions with Legal Server if they have any discussions on the development of an application. So I know I can access it like online through my phone, but I'm just wondering if they do have the plans for one at some point, whereas the current one I use does. Super convenient, you know, in order to use anywhere we're at. And I'm just wondering if they are looking at that ability at some point in the future.
I don't actually know the answer to that. I know that question came up, and to my knowledge, the answer was like, that's not included in our plan, but I don't also think that they have one right now. What I will do is talk with Michael this week and get back to you as soon as I can with an answer on whether that's A, in development, or B, available for us to put in as an add-on should we have the funding. But I agree that that could be a really helpful tool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just switching back and forth between your research tab on your phone and then going back to the server. You know, it's a lot easier when it is an app, but if it's not, it's not. I was just wondering if that might come down the pipe. Thanks.
Sure.
Mario, just out of curiosity, where do you practice?
Lyon County.
Lyon County. Well, we appreciate you being here, and it's a very, very useful comment. So hopefully that will be something that can happen in the future, sooner or later.
All right.
Mario holds an incredibly important position in Lyon County right now. So yeah, I'd love to accommodate whatever his resource needs he needs.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you for that update. Can we move on to our training resources and acknowledgements item? Is that you, Marcy, or?
No, Chair Trom, I'll handle that.
Oh, great. Great. Okay, go ahead.
Take one for the record. To start off, we have several acknowledgements and introductions to make. Dividing this into two categories. If the students that worked in March and April on the practice manual could pop on real quick. I know there's about 3 of them there.
Mm-hmm.
There's Ashley and Brianna. Efren, are you on? There we go.
Yeah, Eduardo.
Perfect. Well, so we'll start here with this group of students. And I want to say a special thank you to Julia Murray at the Clark County Public Defender's Office. This is a group of students that was working with Julia And as part of their intern extern assignments through the Clark County Public Defender's Office, Julia made them available to us to tackle sections of the in development practice manual that we are currently working on. All are 3Ls, and I believe just recently graduated. They did and put together some excellent written work that we're in the process of editing and putting together into a final format. So in addition to these three, Ashley, Brianna, and Eduardo, there's also Greg Cloward, who was unable to make it, Grace Warburton, and Dallas Anselmo. All six, pardon me, worked on different sections of our manual and provided some excellent work. So thank you very much to them. And I believe we have provided, if you haven't received so already, you'll receive in short order certificates of appreciation from the department. So thank you very much for your work, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Many of my favorite students, and I'm just like sad to officially acknowledge that they're not my students anymore, but I guess we'll be colleagues almost by the end of the summer. So
I'm assuming there's a lot of bar studying going on with this group right now.
I suspect so.
Yes. That's the only way you can actually get people to a meeting like this, is that there's something less exciting to do. All right. Thank you so much. The students really, and Julia in particular, just really sprang into action, really like pulling this idea of a resource and making it a thing. And so I know that other students are going to build on it, and hopefully it'll really be a very valuable practice resource for everyone in the state. So that was just a huge effort, and it was great to see people come together and the students work really hard. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much. And so we'll move to our next group of students. And if you are a summer intern or extern and are online, please hop on, show your face. Thank you. So we got Harrison, Crystal, and Nick. So we have a group of 5 interns and externs this summer. For the most part, they are kind of picking up the ball where the last group left off and are working on sections of the student practice manual. We have 2 that are doing a little bit different things. But this is 3 of the 5. We have Harrison Bond, Crystal Folishade, and Nick Wolfram. Harrison and Crystal are both working on sections of our practice manual. Nick, we have working on a summary of the legislation that passed in the last session, so we can put together either a handout or a CLE based on that in conjunction with Clark and Washoe County Public Defender offices as well. And then the other 2, Servando Martinez, who is unable to make it due to technical difficulties, is working on another section of the student practice manual. And our one extern, Emily Driscoll, who is also not present today, is working on doing research for salary and appointed counsel fees for our next legislative session. She's also working, doing a little research on incentive programs offered by either state bar associations or law schools to encourage student practice in rural communities upon graduation. So those are our 5 interns and externs, and they have all been very diligent and hardworking so far, and I'm looking forward to working the summer with them.
That's great. So welcome to all of you. I don't think I've had any of you in class, but I look forward to having you in my classes. And it's sort of one of the miracles of Zoom, right, is that we really can bring people together to do this work statewide, even if you're not all physically together. So this is really exciting.
And then to wrap up this section, a special thanks to the university itself, and particularly Don Nielsen, who is the director of the externship programs, and of course Chair Trom for being able to point us in the right direction where we need some help with the students and intern extern programs. everyone has been super accommodating and willing to answer questions and get our kind of fledgling programs put into place. So with that, I thank everyone for showing up, and hopefully our intern externs will be able to join the August board meeting as well, just to kind of get a flavor of what the department and board do in our work with the state and attorneys. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch.
So when Nick gets done with all of his legislative studies, since I've been to a half dozen meetings already on what AB 424 really means and how it's actually going to work in the real world, which are not necessarily the same, I'd like to read his report on that.
I will be sure to make that available.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jared, for doing all of that, for leading them, revising them. And we look forward to what you produce. It's exciting. And thank you all for showing up for our meeting and waiting an hour to be on. So.
And then just to wrap up our training and resource section, in June, we previously set out the goal to provide at least one CLE per month in order to make sure we're fulfilling our training and education mandate. In June, due to the legal server training, the multiple legal server trainings, we did not put on a CLE for fear of overwhelming calendars. Circling back in July, we will present at least two and maybe part of a third on the legislative session. But we're looking at appellate procedure and pretrial writs as our CLE topics in July. The resources, as we've discussed, the practice manual is underway. We're starting to take what the students in March and April put together and review, edit, and format to get them into a singular document. And the goal is to have a workable resource page up and running by year end. So that's where we're at on those fronts.
And Chair Trum, the only thing I would add to what Jared pointed out is, as this board knows, we are committed to providing resources for our public defenders. And with the remainder of any sort of training or resource money, we will be updating the sample motions collection. The NACDL sample motions collection came up with an update for 2021. So we're hoping to provide that to all of our public defenders, as well as a copy of the Nevada Appellate Practice Manual, which was just published. So we've reached out to each of the offices and we hope to be providing that, and we're in the process of ordering it.
Sounds great. Any questions, comments on all of that?
Hi, this is Chair Trum. This is Laura Fitzsimmons. This is just totally stream of consciousness, but while there are defenders on the line, I'd like to ask, do you think it would be of value to do a CLE with whoever is important at the Department of Parole and Probation on how they calculate points, all so you can fine tune the sentencing? My understanding, and obviously Clark County can tell me if I'm right or wrong, at least in Clark County, there have been some real successes once the defenders are dealing with a pre-sentence report and they understand that there are errors. It's just an area I know nothing about. Everyone else may know about it, but in the rurals, I'm not certain that it would be useful. But if so, I think it'd be an interesting CLE.
And this is Jonelle Thomas from the Clark County Special Public Defenders, if I may. I think it's a great idea. I know our folks could really use it. I'm sure the public defenders feel the same way. I'd love to see a presentation. I don't know that we've zeroed in on who the right person is to do that presentation, if it's the prison timekeeper or someone else, but I really like the idea.
If you like the idea, and if nobody's thinking it's a dumb idea, I can start figuring out through the Department of Parole and Probation, there's probably going to be a supervisor. They're apparently, and I don't know if the Sentencing Commission, Marcy, would be involved in, I don't know exactly what they do, the new sentencing, but I can look at that and then make some suggestions to Jared. And, you know, this would be in the next 6 months or something, because it sounds like you have short-term projects planned. But it's a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. And it really might make a difference to our clients.
That sounds like a great idea, to get everyone together. I mean, which is Laura, Jared, and then whoever is in the public defender's offices or at the department, to find sort of time and sort of what the combination of speakers should be, because it seems like there might be a informational part from the department, but if you're talking about victories, there might be some advocacy stories there to share.
Absolutely, and I'll circle back with Laura after the meeting and kind of get some finer detail on what direction she wants to head with that, and we can move forward accordingly.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you, Laura. Okay, any other comments on the department's report? Okay, let's move on. To confirm the next meeting, we are not meeting in July. So our plan is to meet as scheduled. So you should all have this already, I think, August 25th, which is a Wednesday at 1 p.m. As we mentioned, that very likely will be a workshop on temporary regulations. So we might have sort of a full agenda because of that. But although I don't think that the changes are that substantial, but still, that will be something that is worthy of discussion, and we might have people who participate because of that. So I don't think we need to do any action on that. Do you have anything to say?
The only thing that I would like to discuss too is Joni Eastley has been working very hard on trying to help set up the September board meeting that we're having in Tonopah. I believe that she is working on booking a block of rooms. Is that correct, Joni? And I think we will be reaching out to the board members to let them know the phone number to reserve their room.
Great.
Yes, that is correct.
Excellent.
And my plan is to book them and I've already talked to the manager there, but to book them at the Belvada, which just opened about 2 months ago, and it's just probably 50 feet away from the convention center where the meeting will be held.
And
Okay.
just as a follow-up, I'm hearing that the Belvada is really something we're going to enjoy.
It is absolutely stunning. If you've ever been to the Mizpah, this is more beautiful than the Mizpah. It's just unbelievable.
Thank you, Joni.
Yes,
It's
thank
my
you.
pleasure. My pleasure.
So we'll look forward to getting that information, and then we can make the plan for September.
It's still the 29th, correct?
The 29th is our meeting date in September?
I thought it was the 30th.
I think we're changing it to the 30th.
Okay. I'm glad I asked.
I think it's because there was a NACO meeting on the 29th, so we need to change it to the 30th.
Yeah, there was a NACO conference.
Okay.
Okay. So the 30th is a Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we should be, and do we think that we'll see that information circulated like in the next couple of weeks, Joni?
I think you'll see it in the next couple days.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. So,
Cynthia, could you send out that? I still had it as the 29th on my calendar too from the.
I will make sure a corrected notice goes out to you all.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All righty. Moving on to item number 10 is public comment. Is there anyone who's on, and have we received in the interim any public comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
this is Bevan Lister. Just wanted to express appreciation to Marcy for the presentation she made with the Lincoln County Commission. The rest of the board found it very helpful and very informative. I'm assuming that as she takes it around to the rest of the counties, she's getting probably as an equal response. But it was.
Did I just lose Bevan Lister there?
Think so.
All right, well, he'll
We
come
lost
back. I'm sure he'll click back in a minute so he can finish this comment, but
okay, so how far am I there?
Yes.
yes, you are there now. And I think you trailed off when you said that you thought her similar presentations would be well received in other counties as well, based on what you saw.
Yes, anyway, just wanted to express appreciation. Thank you so much.
I think from Marcy's end, it was probably very, very useful to have you there. So if you could replicate yourself or be with her in every presentation, it probably would go even more smoothly.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay. Any other public comments?
None received by our office.
Okay, anyone else have anything to add? I'm not seeing anything, nothing in the chat. Okay, I think we can adjourn. I always forget whether we need a motion to adjourn or
Nope.
not. We don't. Okay.
Adjourn.
We can be adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
showing
you.
up.
Terrific meeting.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you. Good job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
especially to the
Thank you,
students.
Chair Trump. See you
All
everybody.
right. Take care,
everybody.
everyone. See you in August.